All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very first species profile video here on the channel. So, a little brief explanation on this series. This series is going to cover all the fish that are part of Western New York and that are fairly popular around here for game fish species. We're not going to be covering the bait unless it's specific to what we're doing and that kind of thing. But outside of that, I hope you guys really enjoy this. I've been doing a lot of research into this. And if there's anything I left out, let me know, because, you know, we're doing more of these if it does pretty well. And I'm looking forward to doing these on the other fish around here. So, without further ado, we're going to get right into it. What I'm going to probably do is, when you guys are seeing this, you're going to just, there's going to be pictures and video clips of it instead of you guys just looking at me and talking about it. I think that would be a little bit more exciting and a little bit more visual for you guys and a lot cooler. So for the history portion of it, for the smallmouth, I couldn't really find too much. It just seems like they've been here since the dawn of time, it seems like, from what I've been gathering. So yeah, not too much that's historically significant, with the exception of, per the DEC's website, specifically the tab for smallmouth bass fishing, it does account for 25% of fishing trips for Lake Erie. And when I get my information for the DEC, I'm going to link down at the bottom the bass tab for Lake Erie for smallmouth fishing. I'm going to link that down below, so if you guys want to read it for yourself and all that good stuff, it'll be down in the description below. Coloring on these guys, it usually is a bronze, hence their nickname, the bronzeback. It is usually a bronze color. I've caught some that are gold, brown. I've caught some with the black spot disease, I think is what they call it. I've caught them like that. So wide range of colors. Their coloring is usually directly related to the area that they are residing in. So a more lightly colored bottom, the fish are going to be more lightly colored. Darker colored bottom, darker fish coloring. That's just how it goes for all fish in general. So the native range, so the chart that I have up here, or the picture, this is from a book, which if you guys are looking for a fish ID book, it's a fantastic book. It's the Peterson's Field Guide to Freshwater Fishes, and again, I'm going to have a picture of the book cover, so if you guys want to check it out for yourself. The chart / picture comes directly from that book, so I am pulling it directly from there. So as you can see on this, populations are mostly include the Northeast. That's their native range up in the Northeast section. There are certain places like Maine where they weren't natural. They're kind of considered a nuisance up there, particularly for the brook trout fishermen up there. They're out competing the brook trout, so Maine isn't really a big fan as a state of the smallmouth bass, but their fishery up there is pretty decent from what I've heard. There are even some populations these are not native populations, by the way, but they can also be found in the state of California, Oregon, and Washington out on the West Coast. Texas has a couple areas, Phoenix, and then surprisingly, there are even some places in the state of Hawaii that have populations of smallmouth bass. Now, when it comes to them out in Hawaii, it does seem like those fish are limited to the mountain streams where obviously the water is cooler and has a higher oxygen content. Our smallmouth friends like to have cooler temperatures and a lot of oxygen to the water, hence why we have some of the best smallmouth fishing in the country, because our waters are typically cooler. The size, so again, this is per the DEC. 2 to 4 pounders are common, and they say that, quote, 5s and 6s, you have a chance at those. In my experience, 5s and 6s are fairly common. I'm still looking for my first 6-pounder, but I have caught quite a few 5-pounders as well. That just has to do with the abundance of bait fish and food that's readily available in our lakes. that's why we have such a great smallmouth population, is because the sheer amount of bait that's in the lake. It's ridiculous how much bait is in the lake for these guys to just eat. And that's all they have to do. All they gotta do is just sit, eat, and eat. And that's why they get so big, and that's why most of the fish that you catch are anywhere from 4 pounds. I would say the average for me in the spring especially is anywhere from 3.5 to 4. Anything less than that, it's kind of on the smaller side in my opinion. So the state record was actually just recently set September 22nd, 2024. I'll have a picture of the gentleman who caught it. So from what I remember, it was from the St. Lawrence River, and if I'm wrong, I'll correct that with a little asterisk on your screen with the picture. And that was a 9-pound smallmouth. So that's a huge smallmouth. That's almost as big as a larger size largemouth from Florida and stuff like that. That's just a huge fish to catch. So there are some big ones, and that's one of the things that I think is really cool about this fish is there are a lot of big ones. So some tactics that you can do for your smallmouth. Now, generally speaking, with bait, your best option to do is live bait. Now, not everyone has, number one, access to live bait, can afford live bait, and has live bait near them where it doesn't make sense from a cost standpoint to get it. So basically, tactic-wise, what we are trying to copy is their bait. So most of their food items include emerald shiners, which I'll have a picture of what it looks like up here on the screen, crawfish, and if I'm remembering correctly, another big bait item up here is the spot tail shiner. But the bulk of our bait fish items for smallmouth is the emerald shiner by far, specifically in Erie big time. Emeralds are hugely popular. They're also widely available in popular form down in Niagara, but it definitely seems like anytime you catch a smallmouth and it spits up something, 9 times out of 10, actually, I'll take that back. 8 times out of 10, it's probably emerald shiner. 1 out of 10, it's probably a crawfish, and then the other 1 out of 10, it's probably a spot tail. So the tactics that we use to sort of copy that, drop shot. So basically, that's just a weight or how you basically tie your hook such that there is a little bit of line hanging off the bottom of a hook. And it basically suspends your bait off the bottom, so it reduces snags, and it looks like a suspending minnow. So again, we're trying to copy basically the emerald shiners. Not to say you can't run a craw off a drop shot, it's just that more than likely you're running some sort of minnow soft plastics, or you could even run live bait off of it if you have live bait. That's another effective way of doing it. But you can use you can use soft plastic minnow imitation style baits, and those are very effective. Ned rig, so basically it's just a weighted jig head with a small 2 to 3 inch worm plastic. Again, I'll provide pictures for all these rigs so you know what it looks like and all that stuff. Tube jigs are another really popular one. I've used those a couple times. I haven't had great success with them, but I also don't throw them a lot because most of the time I'm throwing drop shots and Ned rigs. Honestly, I think by far my best method of catching these guys is the drop shot. I just like it because, number one, I flat out catch a lot of fish off of it. I don't snag and lose up a lot of the stuff. And it's fairly simple to tie up pretty much too. That's another plus. Ned rigs is probably my second best. The only reason why I don't like the Neds versus the drop shot is because the Neds I will lose a little bit more because it sits on the bottom more. I'm getting hung up on rocks, which is where most of these fish are living, is in the rock piles and stuff like that. So I lose a little bit more gear, so that's the only reason why I don't like Neds over it. Crankbaits too, that's another really popular choice, and that's a really simple one to use if you are a beginner smallmouth fisherman, is crankbaits. Most of the methods I was talking about, like drop shots, Neds, tube jigs, sometimes these fish are very finesse in their bite, and that you don't really feel it a lot. You're kind of fishing these guys and moving current a lot of times, or moving, and a lot of times they kind of just like literally they'll suck it in like a spaghetti noodle, and you don't really feel a chomp down on it like you would with like largemouth, where they're a little bit more aggressive in my experience, where they'll hit a little harder. The bite is just super picky to pick out sometimes because it's so light. Crankbaits, that fish is actively chasing that bait. You're gonna know when you get a bite. It's, like I said, it's probably the easiest method for a beginner to use is probably the crankbait. Ned rigs would probably be my second suggestion for beginners, just because a lot of times those fish will hammer the crap out of Ned rigs, and they do hit it pretty hard. Drop shot, in my experience, is one of those ones where they'll either hit it really hard or it's a very soft take on it. That would probably be my third option for beginners. You can also use inline spinners for smallmouth too, so like your trout's inline spinners. Those are pretty effective. I've had really good days with spinners. I think my best day I've had with spinners with smallmouth was probably 30 or 40. It is only really a good feasible option for you in the creeks. They struggle in deep water because of how the blade spins. It wants to push the bait up. Most of those fish are hanging closer to the bottom. They're not really suspending or towards the top. Other tactics you can do too that I've seen a lot of guys have success with, whopper ploppers, so that's a top water style bait. You can do spooks, so like the Zara spooks and stuff like that. Those work pretty good if you want to mix it up and you want to have some top water action. But most, I would say probably about, I don't even throw any top water for smallmouth. I am exclusively a subsurface guy, drop shots, neds, tubes kind of guy. I'll throw crankbaits too for him, but those are the 3 or 4 main things that I'm throwing for these guys. Locations that you can find these fish, so pretty much anywhere where there is rock piles, and if you throw your stuff out and you're feeling gobies hit you, great place to look. That's another food item that we didn't talk about, was gobies. I'll pop it up again. I'll pop it up on the screen so you can see what it looks like. Gobies are always hiding in rocks. Again, with it being another major food item, it offers the gobies cover. Those smallmouth go in there, you pluck out the gobies, that kind of thing. So rock piles, target those big time. Weed beds, on the outside of weed beds, I've caught fish, but I've never caught any smallmouth in any sort of weeded area. That's mostly a pike, largemouth bass, even muskie sometimes. I've almost never caught a smallmouth out of any sort of weeds. They're almost always in rock piles and open water. That's just their game. That's what they like. I'm not going to argue with them and what they want. So now this category, I asked, let's see, I have 5 or 6 people on their personal opinions on grading. So from a fightability standpoint, the score went 1 through 10, 1 being low, 10 being high. Out of 5 people on fightability, so this is how well the fish fights, jumping ability, that kind of stuff. Overall, we averaged a 6.9 out of 10, with the high score being an 8. The only reason my personal score was an 8, I gave him an 8. The only reason why I don't push it any more than that is because they are fairly easy to get in. You're not doing any long fights with these guys. Long fight maybe is 2 minutes, maybe 4 or 5 if you're fishing them in like heavy current. So they're, for their size though, however, they are ridiculously strong, especially in current. You feel like you got on 5 or 6 pound fish in current, and it pops up and it's like a 1 or 2 pounder. These fish know how to use the current to their advantage and do it very well. So out in the lake, they're kind of a little lazy. They like to stay down and hug bottom, and then when you start bringing them in closer, they start coming flying up. They want to jump and everything like that. So it's cool to watch, but it's also scary as crap when you see it, because that's when those fish start to come off, because the pressure that's being applied changes versus the water and in the air. So species availability, we gave them an 8.2 on the average, with the high being 10. So this is how readily available you can find these guys around here. It's ridiculously easy. You can go to Lake Erie around here, the lower Niagara, the upper Niagara. You can go to Lake Ontario. Certain times of the year, you can go into the creek systems for them at the very mouths of creeks, and you can just have 20, 30, 40 fish days with them if you wanted to. If you can find rocks, which is mostly what our lakes are around here, so like Ontario, Erie, the river systems, like there's a lot of rock in there. It's perfect smallmouth habitat. They're very easy to locate in that regard. So your ability to give them the bite, we gave them an 8.3 out of 10, with the high score being 10. These guys, in my opinion, are the easiest fish to get to bite, regardless if they are pressured or not pressured. A lot of the times you can make a very good guess. If you see a lot of people fishing an area and if you see what they're using, I bet you 9 times out of 10 for smallmouth it is probably a 3.5 to 4 inch tube jig. It's ridiculous that everyone throws tube jigs for these guys. Now, it works, but the problem is that everyone's throwing it, they see it, they're not going to really touch it too often. So my next go-tos after that, if I know for a fact a lot of people using tube jigs, are Ned rigs and drop shots. I know a lot of people also are starting to catch on to the Ned rig game. So then my fallback is the drop shot. Not a lot of people know how to tie that knot correctly and are unfamiliar with the method around here, which blows my mind because it is so effective. If I can't get them to bite on those 3 things, I just keep moving until I find a bunch of fish that are willing to bite. I've never had a fish or section of river that I knew, lake, whatever it was, and if I knew there were smallmouth in there, I never have thrown one of those 3 things and never had a day where I wasn't skunked. Not one. Those fish will eat one of those 3 things, and if they're not, then there's no fish there, and I will stick to my guns on that one. So the equipment cost. So this is what we deemed as the gear that you need in order to catch them. 1 being cheap, 10 being expensive. So we had an average of 3.4 with the high being 5. This is one of those fish that you could go crazy like me and you can spend $230 to $250 on a rod, $200 on a reel. I personally think it does make a difference. But you could literally, if you really want to, you can go out to the lake or in the creeks and fish them with a worm and bobber, and you're going to be catching them like crazy if you find the right group of fish. You don't have to get fancy like me. You don't have to spend all that money. I think it personally does make a difference to have a more sensitive rod and to be able to use those techniques that I described above. It's the right tool for the right job kind of concept. Alright, so my personal recommended gear for smallmouth in terms of rods and reels, I'd probably recommend a rod anywhere from the 6.5 foot range into the 7 foot range. Backbone, you're looking at like a medium light up to medium. I wouldn't go any heavier than that. You start losing the fight on the fish a little bit more. You can do a light or an ultralight if you're in the creek fishing for some of the guys that are 1s and the 2s. I used to do that all the time back when I fished my local creek a lot, and that was a lot of fun to do that. It's just that you're going to really struggle with those fish when they start getting into the 3-4 pound range and into some current, where you're going to start running into issues and maybe fighting the fish to exhaustion. So you can't, like I said, you can do lights and ultralights. I would save them for the creek personally myself. But again, rod length, backbone, 6.5 to 7 foot, medium light to medium. Action, you can do a fast to an extra fast. Those would be my recommendations for your rod and your rod. Reel size, you're looking at anything from an ultralight size reel if you're going to run the ultralight rod, so like a 500 to 1000. But more commonly, you're looking at like a reel in the 2500 to 3000 size series reels. And if you're doing reels that are in like the 10s and 20s style reels, like you would for the flugers, you're looking at like a 30 to a 35 at most in the flugers. This is mostly spinning gear that I am recommending. You can use bait casters, but I don't have any experience with the bait casters for these guys, so I'm recommending you use spinning gear for these guys, although you can use bait casting gear as well for these guys. But again, you don't have to go gung-ho on the equipment, so I'd say that the 3.4 is pretty good. It's on the cheaper side of the spectrum. So overall fun factor, we gave them an 8.8 on the average with a high being 10. These fish, like I said, due to the fact that you can find a day where you get at minimum 20 fish. That's a slow day for me in the springtime around here is 20 fish. You can have days where you catch 30 or 40. I remember when I went this past spring in 24. When me, my buddy, and my friend, we went out with Mike and we fished the upper. And we had 70 to 75 fish in 8 hours. So about 10 fish an hour. So that's about 1 every 6 minutes almost that we were getting. So the sheer numbers, the way that they fight, sizing with them, it's all a recipe for having a fun time with them. And like I said, due to the fact that they're fairly easy to get to bite, the things that you use to get them to bite are very simple. There's nothing complicated about it. It's a just go out and have fun kind of fish. Crowds to fish for them are generally on, I would say, the low to medium side, depending upon the time of the year, where you're going. So you're not on top of a lot of people generally. There's readily fish available. They're easy to catch. So it's just a fun time to go for them overall. So the overall difficulty, so this is kind of a combination of fightability, species availability, ability to locate, kind of into one. Ability to land them, kind of ordeal. We gave them a 3.6 and then a high score of 5. So they're, on the overall, like I said, ridiculously easy fish to fish for. Readily available. It's one of those things where it's a no-brainer to fish for them. They're a lot of fun. Readily available, easy to catch. I don't know if you guys live around here and you've never fished for them, you guys should totally try doing it. Really, like I said, stupid simple. My personal, so the overall score on this fish before we get into the best time of the year, 6.8. So how we arrived at the score was the combination of fightability, species availability, ability to locate, all that good stuff below. I added those all together, divided it out. The overall score of this fish is the 6.8. So a solid, reputable score. That is, I'm probably in agreement on that. That's probably what I would give them on the overall, would be a 6.8. So another category, are they any good to eat? I've never personally tried them. I've heard people say that they're good. I've heard people say that they're not good. It's not like walleye or perch or crappie where everyone's like, yeah, they're really good to eat, and then about 9 out of 10 times someone's going to say that. In my experience with asking people, talking to people, reading about it online, various sources and all that good stuff, it generally seems like it's going to be a okay fish to eat, but not completely great. And with that, I think we're going to wrap it up right there. Like I said, if there's anything else you guys want to have into these species profile videos, let me know in the comment section, all that good stuff. Like I said, I'm going to leave the links to the species guide book that I talked to you about, the Peterson Freshwater Fish Guide. I'll leave that down below for a link if you guys want to buy it and all that good stuff. And I'm also going to leave a link to the DEC's smallmouth fishing in Lake Erie page, so if you guys want to read up on that kind of stuff, if you want places to go, they also list a couple places to go, as well as the public fishing rights access points and all that good stuff, so you guys can check that out for yourselves. With that, I hope you guys greatly enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it. It was actually a lot of fun doing the research for this, and I think I'm going to either do one of two things. I'm either going to put to poll what you guys want to see next, or I'll just announce it outright. So I'm thinking next video we do steelhead, That one I'll have a lot more history for, and there'll be a lot more information on that one in regards to history. But outside of that, like I said, I'll probably put it to pull. I'm leaning towards that more than likely than just picking steelhead. But we are going to go through a lot of fish that are readily available and to catch around here and all that good stuff. So again, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.